Welcome to Home Dad Chat, brought to you by the National At-Home Dad Network. My name is Brock,
My name is Danny.
and we are here to talk about life as stay-at-home dads. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
No, I don't want much. I even love handmade crafts made of macaroni. Come on now, you should know me. Times I might eat too much. No worry about my weight. Got the dad bod rocking on me. Sketches on my feet. Cargo shorts look good on me. I'm a dad, that's what I do.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the show. It's great to be back after, filling of steak and turkey and cranberry
Nummies.
sauce and having time with family. Hopefully that was good for you as well. And, not too many dramatic things took place.
Right. And for those where it wasn't, we see you. We get it.
Yep, we
We've
get
all
it.
been there.
Definitely. I think there were a few times where my father in particular said a couple different things, and the rest of the house was like, "No, that's enough."
Yeah,
and he was
we
good to
stopped there.
stop. He was really good to stop.
Good.
So that was great. But he, sort of like when you're in court, and you're like, I can say this even though I'm gonna hear like objection, like the jury at least like heard it
Still
kind of
heard it.
deal.
It's still
Yeah,
out there. Yeah.
exactly. Like that's how it felt a lot of times. And I'm like, yes, okay, I get it. You got you got your little zing in there, but at the same time, like we're gonna move on. And
Mhm.
he was good. I didn't have to use the word objection.
I didn't have to raise the gavel at any point.
No, but we made it through, so we're good there, and it was a good time. I think I told you previously that we were gonna go to the baseball diamond and see
Mhm.
the Christmas lights. Yeah, no, that didn't happen.
Oh,
Because with the wind chill, it was like 7 degrees, and I was just like,
yeah.
oh no, we're not walking through that. My brother told us that he was gonna go do this drive-through thing at Frankie Park Zoo, and I was like, sold. And we had a good time.
Stay in
And
the car.
honestly, the money for paying to do that actually goes to help a great organization that helps adults kind of have a second chance at life,
Nice.
with like jobs and things like that are coming out of addiction. So I was very happy to go do that, and that was a lot of fun instead.
Cool. That's great.
Yeah,
I
and then
like
I
to hear
got
that.
Coney dogs, lots of Coney dogs.
That's what I was going to ask is where you going to, did you have Coney dogs?
Oh
Because I
yeah,
know we
four
talked about
Coney
that.
dogs. They were delicious, just slopped on with like chili sauce and the mustard and onions, and they all come with like a little bit of soggy bread, but they are delicious.
A little bit of soggy bread. I understand though, because of the steam. It gets a little too steam.
Oh
It
yeah.
gets a little, I'm
Yep.
assuming, but yeah.
Oh yeah, no, you're not wrong. They have a full like steaming station where they like steam your buns. Like
Hmm.
so
Yeah, as you
yeah.
should.
If you're ever in Fort Wayne, Indiana, you definitely got to stop and get Coney
Go get
dogs.
a
It
Coney
is
dog.
such an iconic place. I don't know if I sent you pictures or not, but there's like a building right beside it that's got this massive Santa with like reindeers. It's all lit up.
Cool.
That's been around since I was a kid. So it's a very old
Wow.
antique thing that they put up every year. Yeah, it's easily 50 or 60 years old, maybe even older than that. It's like that's the place. Like
Hmm.
everybody goes there. There's a big parking lot in front of it, so people come and they'll park and they'll snap family photos there and yeah,
Nice. Oh,
it's
that's
really neat.
cool. That's
Yeah.
very cool.
Hey, couple things for today. I'm only on for this section of the
Just
podcast.
the intro.
So yeah, I gotta take a kiddo to the doctor. So he's fine. Just a regular checkup, just making sure everything is on the up and up. But
Hmm.
good all around there. But and I am kind of bummed because the our your guest for today is just quite intriguing. She was on with
Hmm.
Matt Strain on a webinar, which I've just
Hmm.
found that out. Things have been so busy. Like I sometimes you just don't see some of that stuff come through. I'll have to go back and look at that also along with when I edit this. But you get to talk to Tovah Klein,
Hmm.
PhD,
Hmm.
and she comes with a lot of information.
Yeah, a
I
lot of education for
Yeah.
sure.
You were telling me a little bit about like the fact that like kind of her thing is like toddlers and then also too like just raising children resiliently and that kind of thing. And I I'm like, yeah, man, like I think we're all just toddlers a little bit inside. Like there's always things to learn and to process in
Well,
different ways.
it's that because her studies have been mainly on toddlers, and that was the first thing I'm like, well, I don't have toddlers anymore, but I kind of remember. I know it's not the same as being in it, but in listening to her on several other interviews, the point kept coming back of when you we call them three-nagers. When your kid's three, they start just pushing at you, pushing at you. And the reason we call them three-nagers is because teenagers push at you and push at you, and they
Right?
want to make sure you're a wall. Like, are you really there? Are you solid? Are you going to stay? Or can I just knock you over and do whatever I want? And they want you to be that wall. They want you to be a secure place for them. They want you to be a foundation, but they're going to make it really hard for you. They're going to push you to your limits, right?
Yes,
But
very
the
much.
correlation between how a 3 year old or a toddler works and operates and how teenagers work and operate. And in reading her book a little bit, and it's called Raising Resilience, it's very much about a lifelong process of teaching your kids how to deal with times that are uncertain. We have the
Hmm.
from the pandemic, we have, even as far back as 9/11, the tsunamis in Japan. It's so many things that what would I do as a parent?
Yeah.
How would I
Yeah.
handle that? And as you mentioned earlier, I would freak out.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
If
you got tornadoes and hurricanes and
hmm
like and mass amounts of snowfall and like that
hmm
kind of stuff. So yeah, definitely there's
yeah,
all kinds of different elements to it.
and not only the adversity of life, but the uncertainty, which is part of the title of her book. Because of that, how do we deal with what we don't know? What's going on? How is this going to work out? What's going to happen tomorrow? Not to get political, of course, but the recent election put a lot of people into a place of uncertainty. Some people are very happy about things, some are very unhappy about things, and we're not going to get into politics. So, but wherever you are on that, there's an amount of uncertainty because it's a big change in what's going to happen. And I love the idea of learning to teach our kids how to deal with that, how to
Yeah.
look at, this crazy world that's coming at you. And it's like, oh, what do we do now? First, don't panic. You know, that's the easiest one, and then move on from there.
Yeah, I mean, I think as you grow up, you're always going to be in environments of influx,
Hmm
whether that be a neighborhood that you live in, especially like if you decide that you're going to live in an HOA, to living in an apartment complex,
hmm
where there's all kinds of different little things that change. I mean, yeah, I think that growing, continually instilling that in our children is going to be helpful. I think for a lot of us adults, like it's almost like second nature. You're like, yeah, we know, like, we're just gonna have to like what's next, that kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
I was thinking too about the fact that, just talking about she's very heavy on toddlers, main, that kind of thing. But at the same time too, I mean, really, what is a teenager? I mean, is it not just a grown-up version of a toddler that has more articulation? Because I mean, if you think about it, if you tell a toddler to do something, they're going to argue with you. They're going to have their own thing and they're
Yeah.
going to try to like, stand their grounds. Same thing teenagers do. They
Yeah.
just have more verbalization and the ability to walk out the house and you're not like, come back. Like you're like, all right, fine, go take a walk. Maybe
Yep.
just that'll cool you down. It's like can't do that with a toddler so much.
In a toddler, the two words that we run into that are just incessant is no and why. you know,
Right?
and getting into that situation with a toddler, they're just going to say no just on principle. There's nothing wrong with what they, no,
Seems
no.
like what teenagers
It
do though
just,
too, right?
and it is, yes, because you get to that point and they want, like you said, they're more verbal about it. They have greater skills in that area, but they still want to know why. They want to look at it and go, no, I don't want to do that. And
Yeah.
then they tell you why they don't want to do that, which is much better. And they ask you why they should do it. And they're
Hmm.
still in their way saying, no, I don't want to do that. Well, hang on.
Yeah.
Let's think about the situation. What's going on? What do you not like? And what have you? It's a lot easier in some ways to handle a teenager. And it's honestly a lot easier in some ways to handle a three-nager
I
because a
I look at
toddler,
it, yeah, I was gonna say I look at it too though, man, and it's like, okay, so toddlers, like here you are with kids who are they're not in school. they're learning a lot of new things, and you're getting them ready to go to school, to be in that environment of being around other people and learning things. And then teenagers, they are in that environment, but you're trying to get them ready for the world, like,
Hmm.
and so it's like, here's one little world, school, like that environment. And then here's another one when you get into teenage years, is like the bigger thing. It's like, I'm going to release you out into the world and hope that even though all the combatancy that we've had, like that you've picked up on these things, and I'm always going to still be here for you. Just like,
Hmm.
as a toddler, as a parent of a toddler, you're like, I'm walking alongside of you. Like,
Yeah.
if you're going to run and do something crazy, like, I guess I'm going to be ready to catch you type of
Yeah.
deal. Like,
Yeah.
and on the other side of it, when you're a teenager, it's like, I'm here, but at the same time too, like, I only get to rush in if you invite me to rush in, because
Mhm.
I can't be rushing in that format. Like, that actually will inhibit you from
Right.
becoming who you actually
Yeah.
are trying to be.
Al Watts said it really well at the convention, with his son Miles, and he said it was Miles is the engine, but we're the cars.
Mm,
We're giving him more responsibilities, but we're also giving him more weight. Like, okay, we want to do this, but let's just hang on. This is how we're going to do it, or this is what we need to do first, or this is how we get from A to Z, and giving that plan, but still letting your child at that age be the responsible one. Step into those basically adult decisions and make their mistakes. Get out there and go. Junior high and high school, that's when you should be screwing up. That's my philosophy on it. That's the time that you can get away with it. Basically, you can look
that
at it
is,
and go, "Oh,
yeah,
I ran into a mailbox." Yeah, okay, all right. That sucks. I'm very angry, but are you okay? All right. Well, then we're going to fix the car. We'll pay for the mailbox. And now when you're backing out of the driveway, this is why I tell you to do it this way, to be looking, and what have you, and to pay attention, not turn the radio on until you're on the street or whatever.
yeah,
And those little things that we're pushing them, and they still need us there, and they fight us almost every day. I love my son. I love all my kids, of course, but man, my 15-year-old is pushing my buttons.
yeah.
And I'm like, "Ah, I understand. I know why you're doing this, but we're not going to do it that way."
Yep. Well, it's like there's a safety net, for the majority of a child's life. And then as you get more and more through like the teenage years, like that safety net starts to slowly disappear until it's like,
Right.
okay, there's no safety net here. Like, you are at the mercy of the world in a way, like, and that kind of thing. So, yeah, it'll be a very interesting conversation to talk to Dr. Klein and see, just all the different things that she presents on. And I'm very excited and bummed that I'm not going to be on for it. And so I'll get to listen to it later, like the rest of you all. But yeah, so that's the pre portion of everything. So I hope that everybody's excited to hear the interview here in a few minutes. And when you come back, it'll just be Danny and his guests, and we'll go from there. So for me, I'll talk to y'all next week, and Danny will be back here in just a few minutes. Become a member of the National At Home Dad Network, an organization focused on providing advocacy, community, education, and support, connecting with households where dad is the primary caregiver of the children. We do this through our webinar and podcast series, mental health support groups, regular online social events, as well as our annual convention. The National At Home Dad Network is a 100% volunteer organization. Without the generous support of its members and the community around it, we would not be able to continue the work that we do. Becoming a member gives you access to past convention speaker presentations, the ability to vote for board members annually, and ensures that the organization's fees and bills are in positive standing. Oh yeah, it should not go unmentioned that there is some cool swag headed your way if you decide to become a member. For only $35 a year, your membership provides you with the exclusive content only we can generate, and you'll be supporting an organization that benefits families all around the country and world. By advocating for them, offering them community, providing education and guidance, and supporting them to grow in their parenthood journey. And one last thing, if you contribute $500 or more, you will become a lifetime member. Not only will you receive everything already mentioned, but also a certificate recognizing your status and an exclusive National At-Home Dad Network challenge coin with our trademark logo, Dads Don't Babysit. So, what are you waiting for? Become a member today.
And welcome back to the show. And welcome to Dr. Tovah Klein, author of Raising Resilience. Dr. Klein, I'm very happy to see you today.
I'm excited to be here.
It's been great. Well, I did listen to your interview with Matt Strain on our DadX, and that was great. I wasn't able to participate at the time because I had my kids being kids like they do. But I wanted to talk to you for just a few minutes before we get into your book and everything else, because one, we like to kind of get to know our guests as far as who they are. And you have three kids, and they're all grown. Is that right?
Yeah, or I think they're grown. They're 20, 24, and 27.
Yeah.
Almost 27, yeah.
Well, of appropriate age where they should be grown, right?
Yes.
They never go away.
They still come back. That's the
Yeah.
whole premise of my book. You want them to want to come back when they don't have to.
Yes, and I would love to talk about that because that's something that I know a lot of our listeners, most of them being at-home dads, work really hard on being the best parent they can be. And a big part of that for most of them has been developing that trust in their children that you love them, so that you develop that relationship. So, I may not like what you're doing. I may not appreciate your words or your choices. We may need to regulate some other things, but realistically, I love you and I want what's best for you. And I found a lot of that in the other interviews that you've done, and you have done quite a few interviews, let me say. So I'd love to talk a little bit more about that, developing that relationship to where you can believe that they're going to want to come back and see you.
Yeah. So a lot of it comes, I mean, literally in the day-to-day kind of what every dad listening thinks of maybe as the mundane, or I sometimes say the tedious, boring, but in those interactions, we convey a lot to our children, which is you're going to be good sometimes, you're going to be not so good sometimes. It's okay. I'm going to still love you. Those mornings where you're trying to get children out of the house and one won't get dressed and the other one forgets their backpack and on and on. You may not be even at your best moment, but the message can still be, whoa, that was rough. Now we're all in the car. Let's get to school. We're good again.
Mm-hmm.
And the more that we as parents can do that, dads, moms, whoever the caregiver is, the more that we convey to children, I see all of you, I love all of you, even at your worst moment, and importantly, even at my worst moment. We
Nice.
own that stuff, then that relationship has a really solid foundation, and children over time really trust, oh, this parent's going to be here for me, dad's going to be here for me, even when it's rough, even
Mm-hmm.
when he yells, even when I'm not listening. And you want that because as they get older and then they're teenagers, you want them to be able to come to you and say, I messed up, and
Nice.
not feel like they're going to be judged for it, but that you're going to go, okay, tell me what
Yes.
happened. And in your head, you're going to say, don't say anything, just listen first,
Right.
which is hard. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And don't judge. And I found that to be just a kernel of truth in everything
Yeah.
that I've heard you say and everything that I've read. It's so important to be able to allow your kids to come to you and tell you the things that are going on,
Yeah.
and not tell them they're wrong or not interrupt them or not say, no, you need to do this. And we talk a lot as well about something that we think for most of us, our parents never did, which is apologize.
Yeah.
And admitting that you were wrong, which is very difficult for a lot of people, just to be able to say, I was wrong, I'm sorry. Just for anybody really, but to say it to your child, the idea of, I think if it had come down to it, my dad or my mom, either one would have said, I'm sorry. They were able to do that, but I really doubt anybody else, not his dad, of course, or their mom and dad would never have said that. But the understanding of being able to look to your child and say, I know I'm not perfect, and I'm not expecting you to be perfect. I was wrong.
Right.
and giving them that opportunity to look at you and say, oh, well, you are a human being. I really think that too adds into that trust that they recognize, oh, mom or dad did this too.
Yeah.
You know?
I think in a way, it's like really it's a core of humanity, but also a core in this relationship between the parent and child, right? When I talk about resilience, I talk about not a dose of something, but this piece that's developing through the relationship. And this is such a key piece of it because children get worried. They get scared at those moments where either they've acted in a way that they know a parent is not happy with, or the parent is upset with them. It's very scary because they need us.
Mhm.
And we often forget this, right? They need us at 2 and at 5. They also need us at 8 and at 18. And we forget that we're still important. We're still there. I call it the anchor. We're still their anchor in life. And so when we go back and say, listen, I shouldn't have yelled like that, and I apologize. I was upset, but that was wrong. They learn a couple of things. One is that it is human to own your own stuff. Equally important, we all make mistakes. We all do things that we need to repair, which is part of the relationship. And as you said, you don't have to be perfect, nor could you be. So our standards often for our children, particularly our first ones, tend to be way too high because it's our first one. It made
Yep.
you a daddy, it made me a mommy. It's like, oh, we put the weight of the world on them without meaning to. And when they look up, they see us. They see the parent or two parents if there's two. And they're like, I can't quite ever meet that standard. Whereas, your second or latter borns, they're born into siblings and they're like, aha, I can catch that. Whether they can or can't at the
Yes.
moment is irrelevant. They're close. And so by going back and reconnecting, first of all, it's relief for them because they're worried. And parents will say to me, oh, he doesn't care. I yell, I take away privilege, like all this stuff. Oh, he doesn't care. I say, no, that hard outer shell is actually part of fear. Right? I'm going to put power on because I don't know how long that parent's going to be mad at me is really scary for
Yeah.
them. So, yeah, it's human to reconnect, and it really is a key element of building trust. And it's that trust and love and joy that gets them to want to come back as they get older and say, hey, I'm coming home today, or can we have dinner? And, anyone listening who has young children is not thinking about when they're adults, but we're raising them from the minute they come into our lives to be decent human beings and decent adults once they get there. We want
Yes.
them to want to come back and we want them to still enjoy our company.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that. So, the full title of the book, Raising Resilience: How to Help Our Children Thrive in Times of Uncertainty. I think that's very appropriate right now for a
It's
lot of
right.
people. I know you've probably talked about the election more than you want to, and we don't need to get into that, but just the reality of the uncertainty of the times
Yeah.
we live in, coming out of quarantine. Most of us, our children during quarantine were home with us 24/7. It was great. We love our kids.
Yeah.
Would like to stop being their only friend in the world, but
Yeah.
yes, it's
Got
great.
to know them very, very well, right?
Very well. Yep. And their teachers and
Yes.
literally had talked to every one of my kids' teachers. I'm so sorry. I don't know how you're
Yeah.
handling this. We're not handling it well, but I'm glad
Yeah.
you're here and doing
Yeah.
what you can. But the reality of uncertainty, of course, it's not just right now. It's not since
Hmm.
2020. There's always been things that families have been uncertain about, whatever it could be financial, it could be natural disasters, it could be quarantines, things like that. And I know your book goes into this, and I encourage everybody to read it to get the full story. But I would like to know a little bit about what you would think would be the top few things we could do in rearing our child so that they, and I love the word thrive because
Hmm.
that's what we want for our kids. We don't want our kids just to survive. We want them to become, like you said, decent adults and amazing people and have wonderful things. What would you say would be the like first few steps that we would need to take as
Get
parents
there.
to get there?
Yeah, because so, a big premise of my book, which was envisioned long before the pandemic, and then I put it aside for a while, even though I'd written a proposal. Then the pandemic came like 4 years after I'd started, the ideas, and I was like, oh, I don't know what this is, but it feels really uncertain. The whole idea is that uncertainty is always here. Always. Like that's your given in life. There's going to always be uncertainty, and uncertainty unsettles us. Why? Because as humans, even as mammals, right? You could study this in rats and mice, and but as humans, we like certainty. We like predictability. We like to know, I would say, who's going to be at the cocktail party. We like
Hmm.
to know what's going to happen when we show up, whether it's at school or at our job or at a doctor's office. Right? We don't like the unknown. So it rattles us. And so we can be sure that children are going to face uncertainty all the time. You know, my friend wouldn't play with me who I thought I was going to play with at recess. And as you said, at home, there's tension and I don't know what it is. So all of those factors matter. The first thing I always say about children is that we start by listening to them. Because as parents, first of all, we have to get through the day. So we're always orchestrating that. But we tend to tell our children what to do when they come home and complain about a friend or about a teacher or that test, their algebra test wasn't what they thought it was going to be. We tend to jump in with like, well, next time when you need to study, do it differently, which they just take as blame. They're like, no, I need to tell you how bad this was. So listening goes a long way, whether it's that your child needs to vent or they're just sad, they're quiet, and you listen, they feel heard, they feel understood. That's a
Yeah.
real gift of bad things happen. Even if I, as the parent, think it's a little bad thing, your child may think it's a big bad thing.
Right.
It actually starts to prepare them for the bigger bad things that will happen in their life. I'm sorry to say,
Hmm.
adversity comes at some point because they feel like I'm not alone. And that's what listening does. It says to the child, I'm here for you.
Hmm.
I'm here for you. Even if I need to move you along, like, I'd like to hear more about that. I got to make dinner. Do you want to come with me in the kitchen and help?
Right.
They feel like they've got this person who's by their side. So that's one. Another thing that really helps all of us, and especially children, face uncertainty is routines. So anybody listening can think about, what are your routines of the day? What's your wake up routine? Who gets breakfast on the table? How do you get them out the door? Bedtime routines, routines around meals, usually dinner, weekends, it could be breakfast and lunch. All of those routines, yes, important for little ones because they have no sense of time, but also important as children get older because they're grounding. On Thursday nights, we have a family dinner. I can count on that. On
Hmm.
Sunday mornings, we do breakfast together. I can count on that. But it also helps them walk through the day. So routines are important because they're dependable, which is calming in the face of uncertainty. But also we can predict them. We know they're going to be there and they walk us through the day. And you know this because if you skip a part of your own routine, you tend to skip another part. I always say, like, if something gets messed up in the morning, chances are I'm going to forget my keys. Why?
Right.
Because normal, it's like breakfast, put the dishes in the sink, help everybody brush their teeth, then I grab my keys. If one of those pieces is off, it tends to throw us off. Children are the same way. We like automatic. I do this every
Hmm.
day because I do it every day, which might sound funny because we have to remind our children, remember, after breakfast, the plate goes in the sink. Remember,
Right.
when dinner is done, the bath gets started. Like it's those constant reminders, though, actually help children get what we call self regulation. Oh, first there's this thing, then there's that thing. It actually helps them. So even those two pieces are really grounding. And then I would go back to, what we talked about before, repair, coming back together when you've disconnected. Disconnection's not the worst thing in the world. I missed what you were upset about. I just wanted to go back to it. If you want to talk about it at some point, I realize I really did overlook that. That says to the
Excellent.
child, I'm human and I'm back. They need to know that they're not alone in the world. That's their superpower. Realizing I'm not alone in the world. This parent is here for me.
Mhm. I have to say too, for all of us that are right here around the holidays, the the need for schedule for routine is
Yeah.
so amazing,
Yeah.
and it just takes one day away. We heard so many of our dads were like, okay, it's Monday after Thanksgiving. We
Yes.
just got to get the
Yes.
kids back in the routine. We got to do this,
Mhm.
and we were talking about how to do it, how to get them ready, like getting ready for school for the first time in the year.
Yeah.
What is our routine going to be? And a lot of our dads will go and do it the day before or a couple of days
Mhm.
before and just get the kids up and go through your routine until they're ready to go to school. So you get them into that habit again,
Right.
back into it. But the holidays and the grandparents, no offense to
Yes.
grandparents, I love you all,
Yeah.
but please don't feed my kid that. Please don't keep my kid
Yeah.
up till
Yep.
midnight or whatever. And throwing that off, like you said, it's just a small thing, but then the next morning is just tremendous.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
huge how much change it gets. And I think all of our listeners, all of our parents really understand what you mean by
Yes.
how valuable routines are for sure.
And what's funny about it is that when I was writing this book, and the book really goes across ages,
Hmm.
it's about toddlers, it's about elementary age, it's about teenagers,
Yes.
because this is about human connection between parent and child. I was like, do I put routines in here again? Even though I'm not talking solely about young children, I realized, of course,
Yeah.
because after a disaster or you've been uprooted, there's been a fire in your home, you've been uprooted. This was true after 9/11. I did a pretty large study of families with children who had been direct witness to the World Trade Center. You hear the stories over and over. We got to safety, and then somebody said, we got to get lunch for the children. Or, how are we gonna set up, the afternoon? Is there a playground nearby if they were young children? That idea, we've gotta get back to some normalcy no matter where we are. You hear it in stories of people fleeing war, being flooded out of your house. It's like big or little, you set
Hmm.
up those routines. Bedtime being the big one. Even for our older
Yes.
kids, we go, look, it's 10 o'clock. Even though we have to stay at grandma and grandpa's for the next week while the house gets fixed, you still got to go to sleep.
Right.
And it actually brings a sense of safety and calm.
Hmm. That's amazing. And Brock and I did talk about that, the work that you've done previously, 9/11, tsunamis, and everything else. And he said, I don't know how after something like that you'd be able to just go get lunch or go to the park
Yeah.
or do. He said, I don't know where would you be mentally that you were strong enough to do that. And I went,
Yeah.
I can't tell you, man. I think it comes down to sacrifice of self, which is a lot about
Yeah.
what parenting is. Like, okay, this is where I'm at. I can't be right there right now.
Yeah.
I need to just step out of that box and say, okay,
Yep.
I'm gonna deal with that later. I'm gonna process all this later, but right now, my kids need me. And I think that's one, just like a superpower almost that
Yeah.
we get as parents that not all of us have, but that we develop because our ability to just say, I need to wait on this, and I need to take care of this child or
Yeah.
or my children and what have you. Um, Go ahead.
I absolutely agree with you. I mean, and the data shows us this, the science shows us that it's like an automatic process because of the protective factor. I have to protect this child becomes I've got to get them a meal, or we've got to set up a bed somewhere with blankets and whatever. We also know that parents have higher rates of PTSD after a disaster. Why? Because we do this
Hmm.
and we take care of our needs later, and we are responsible for other humans.
Mm.
And so there's a vulnerability that comes with it. And when people set up support services, they know to make sure to look out for parents or caregivers. Somebody might be caring for an elder person or somebody who's got, like some kind of handicap, disability. But it is true, we give up of self almost automatically. And so I think people listening say, like, I don't know that I could do that. And I would say we as parents have much more ability than we think. And when we're tested, it tends to show through.
Oh, I agree with that 100%. I've been so impressed with so many parents that I've seen and the ability to just handle so many things
Yeah.
just smoothly. It's like they're on ice. There's just no bumps at all. They've got it all under control. And I find that amazing. And I
Yeah,
know I'm a parent too. You're a parent. I know we've both done these things, but I don't have a story about that for myself. I figure like I'm just fumbling through it and
good. No,
everyone
it's
else
good you
is
don't.
doing what they're
Yeah,
doing, right?
yeah.
And I love to see that. So one of the things that we say a lot on our show and in our organization is kids spell love Time. Basically being there with your kids. And a lot of times when we look at it, like, well, yeah, I spend time with my kids. But I think what you're defining for us is more about the quality of the time, that attention that you give them, the realization that, like you said, well, I have to go make dinner, but I want to listen to you. I want to hear what you want to tell me. And I want to move from here to there if you can come with me so that I can keep working so that you're still putting them as a priority, even though you have to do, and whatever it might be, you might have to go to work. You might have a job outside the house. You've got to go and you have to leave them, but you can say, I'll be back at 5:45. And why don't you and I give me 5 minutes to get in, get my shoes off or whatever and settle in. But
Right.
why don't you and I plan to be together at 5:50, what have you, and establishing that rapport with them so that they understand how very important they are to you.
Yeah, and I agree with you. That is what I'm saying, right? Children, I think children actually don't measure relationships in terms of time. It's this other bond that, we
Mhm.
say is, an emotional bond or an affective bond that says, this parent loves me and I can count on them. Because often children sort of run in, they they run in for a moment, they run out, right? They're not measuring the time. I always think of
Mhm.
this moment many years ago when my husband would often take the kids on the weekend to visit his parents. And because of my own workload, I'd be like, I'm going to stay back and just knock some things off my list. And one time, one of the kids said, "But mommy, I like it better when you come too." And they're so big, they were so busy at my in-laws, like, the grandparents had things for them to do. I'd say, "But you guys are really busy. When you're there, you have a good time with grandma and grandpa." And they would say, "We just like when you're there."
Oh,
And I
oh,
realized something, and you think
I'm
like
gonna
I do this
cry.
work all the time. Yeah. I was like, they literally would like run in. I would be reading or something and they would run in, but clearly they would see that I was there. So the reason I say this, it's a segue to think about what does it mean to be there for your child? And like you said, I would say to them, okay, but when you get home, it'll be around 6 o'clock and I'm gonna have dinner ready.
Hmm.
So it was like we are gonna reunion. And this question of what does it mean to be there means you don't have to drop everything all the time. But I would put this more in the category of, oh, those phones that
Yeah.
every parent has to contend with, our own, not our kids. That's a different story. But and how distracted are you when you are with your child?
Hmm.
I live in New York City, and just last night I was going to give a talk, and there's this very sweet dad gets on the train with like I'd say a 10-year-old son. And that little boy was so happy to be with his dad, and he was smiling and he was leaning against him. And then the dad pulled out his phone and was texting. And I could see this little boy's face kind of just drop a little bit.
Hmm.
And you could feel this change of energy. And then the dad would look at him and, like, pat his knee. It was all very sweet, but then he would go back to texting. I
Hmm.
thought that's what we forget. We're actually not with them.
Right.
And the reason that driving in a car has advantages is because you have to keep your eye on the road, but you can still be in
Hmm.
connection with your child in a way that the phones take us to, like, I don't know where, Neverland, even with though
Right.
your child's right next to you. And walking, going for a walk, you don't have to even talk. You're
Hmm.
walking, if you have a local store you can walk to, or, you're walking in the park, you're throwing a ball back and forth. These are times you're with your child. It's not necessarily words.
Hmm.
And but like, the way children will talk at those moments, like repetitive activity, throwing a frisbee, going for a walk, being in the car,
Yeah.
they tend to talk. Why? Because you're
Hmm.
not asking anything of them. You're not
Right.
like doing this thing that we all do, moms, dads, how was your day? And they're like silent, right?
Right.
They're like, but you're just together. And so when you have those together moments, they don't need you all the time.
Hmm.
They know I'm gonna have these together moments. Or they come in, you're busy doing something, they come in and they go, "Dad, can I tell you something?" Hopefully you're able to stop and go, "Yeah, sure, honey, what?" and they tell you something and then they leave again
Hmm.
and you go back to what you're doing. So it's really thinking about, when am I available genuinely? And when you can't be, you say it. I'd love to be with you right now.
Yeah.
I have to finish this work thing.
Hmm.
Even though it's boring, I used to say to my kids, it's boring, but I still have to do it. And then I'm going to be with you, at dinner, or I'm going to come out and, read a book with you. Whatever it is, you're saying to them, I'd like to be with you, but it can't be right now.
Hmm.
I think that says to children, I do love you, even when I can't give you my full attention.
Yeah. I would agree with that 100%. That's very well said. So I want to just pivot just a little bit because you've been working at the Toddler Center for Barnard College for, is it 20 years or 30?
30.
Is
This
it
is my
30? Okay.
30th year. Yeah.
So 30 years working with toddlers every day, studying them, learning about them, their psychology, their development, and so many other things about them. And I have to say, love my children. Have several, right? And I had two as toddlers at the same time, and it was great.
Yeah.
Great. That was what it was. But I really would like to know more about your experiences there and one, how you got into it, or why I guess you got into what moved you into that area. But then how have your day-to-day experiences been for 30 years with
Yeah.
toddlers?
Yeah, it's a funny thing, because if you think about the toddler world, it's a really bizarre world. And that's where my
Yes.
first book came from, How Toddlers Thrive, because I realized I live this every day.
Hmm.
And if I could explain to parents what this world is, they would shift how they think about toddlers and young children, and they would enjoy it more. Because again,
Nice.
predictability, you'd be like, oh, that thing in her hand, she's going to throw that. Rather than
Right.
saying, why did she throw it? It's like,
Yes.
because it's in her hand. That's why she's
Yes.
going to throw it.
Nice.
Um, but I learned so many things by watching. It's really, again, like watching, listening,
Hmm.
which is, every toddler is different. But the really interesting part of my work is that we have children. It's like a living laboratory for our college students, our psychology students. It's a program for the community, and then we can
Hmm.
do research there. And there's a lot of joy and a lot of emotions.
Hmm.
So every toddler is different, and certainly every parent is different. But every group of toddlers has its own personality. And that's, I think, the piece
Oh,
that I find so interesting. So you have 12, the group size is 12. They come usually twice a week for like a preschool. They're 1.5 to 3. And the sort of energy of a group of children varies. And that's always interesting to me.
hmm.
And then it's all about their emotions. Everything is about their emotions. And
Yeah.
so we really work on helping them know it's okay to be angry. It's okay to miss daddy after he drops you off. It's
Yeah.
okay to not want the rice cakes, the beautiful rice cakes that we serve for snack. We're going to still love you. Like,
Hmm.
eat it or not, that's up to you. But I got into it really because in college, way back when, attachment studies were kind of at their height. And I was the person videotaping what we call the strange situation, which looks at attachment, like what is secure attachment, what is insecure attachment. And
Okay.
I was videotaping with these enormous video cameras at the time. And I kept seeing, at the time, we only thought about mothers. Although it's interesting because
Hmm.
we would discuss fathers. The question always was, would this be the same with fathers? And that those studies came a few years later. It turns out being attached to a loving human is what matters.
Yeah.
Mother, father, it could be a grandparent, even, right? But you need a stable, loving attachment with someone, ideally. So
Hmm.
I watched these back and forth situations, and what the piece that really drew me in was that there were some children who, when a mother, after leaving and then coming back, so the child's left with an unknown person who's new to them, lots of them cry, some of them don't cry, they just sort of stop playing. Usually when the mother would come back, there would be a reunion, that's the repair, and they would go back to playing. Like, oh, even if they had been hysterical, the mother comes back, they calm down, they go back to playing. There were some children who could not recover. They lost
Mm.
their curiosity, they lost their ability to play. These are 1-year-olds.
Oh,
They
wow.
couldn't quite take comfort from the mother. They would go for it, go to the mother, and then they'd turn their back, they'd put their heads down. And I was so taken by that. There I was, like 20, 21 years old. I thought, I have to understand that because
Hmm.
every parent wants the best for their child. I think I already knew that. Something's awry here. And if I can figure out how to help that dyad,
Hmm.
then we could be repairing. And then I went out in the world and I worked with children living in very, very tough situations in New York City, very impoverished, homeless. And I was like, wait, there are still some children doing really well here. Some parents able to protect their children. So it was like the flip of this, even when life hands you terrible things, some people against the odds could still protect. And I was like, I've got to figure that out. And that's really what got me into this. The other piece is I always just found incredible joy with young children, incredible
Yeah.
joy. So I put those two pieces together. And even when I was in graduate school, anytime a case came in that was of a child even under the age of 6, people would say, oh, Tova, this graduate student will take that.
Take that one.
Whether it was abuse, whether it was aggression, I was very interested in what's going on with that child that
Hmm.
so early on they were struggling or something bad had happened to them. And that's really what got me into this. And then, timing's everything. This job opened up right when I was leaving school. And it's a funny, this is just a different story for another time, but I basically said, no, I'm not going to be an academic. Like that academic life, I don't think is for me. And then here was this job, and I've spent 30 years as a professor with really incredible Barnard College and Columbia University
Hmm.
students and working with parents and working with children. I say I get it at all levels, right? The toddlers, the teen, college students, and the parents. And it never bores me. It really doesn't because, the context of our lives change
Hmm.
severely, right? But what young children need doesn't change. Their brain development doesn't suddenly shift. They still need stability. They still need protection. They still need to reunion with a parent even
Hmm.
if they've had a rough day, even more so if they've had a rough day, the child. So all of that together is what got me into this. And I still enjoy going and observing and watching those small humans find their footing. And it really is the beginning of who we become as adults.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. I'm a little jealous. I have to admit, toddlers are amazing. I don't
Yeah.
want one anymore.
Yeah.
All
I
right.
don't
But I would
either.
love to have one for a little while,
Yeah.
right? And maybe chase them around for a couple hours. And I,
Yeah.
I love the idea of being there and watching that the groups are different, which is very, I mean, it's not really surprising, I shouldn't say, but it's interesting to hear that
Yeah.
because it goes from being, okay, this is how kids operate. Well, this is how kids as a group operate,
Yeah.
respond, and what have you. And I love that. And I really appreciate you sharing that experience with us. So, no,
And
mhm,
I just say before we start,
yeah.
that for anyone listening, and you and me as well, who have more multiple children, when one is gone, like the first time my parents took one of our children on a trip, and then we had just two of them, I was like, oh, I knew he was the problem. The very, and then a few weeks later, they
It's
they they took our easy child with them,
right.
also, because fair is fair, right? So
Hmm.
they took
Yeah.
the one that we thought was like sort of the easiest. And the other two shifted and life was calmer at home. And I was like, oh, it's not that one is necessarily shaking it up, although one may be. It's that going from 3 to 2, 2 is just easier.
Yeah.
Going from
Yeah.
4 to 3, 3 is
Yeah.
just easier. And so I said to my husband at the time, do you think if we had 7 children and one of them went away, he was like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
I
Yeah,
love it. It's
because
so true.
it's group dynamics. Yeah.
Yeah. And adding another kid in, I've had a lot of parents that say, well, I don't want to, it's okay if I bring my kids over. And I'm like, yeah, of course. I assumed you were going to bring your
Yeah.
kids with you. And like, well, is it going to be too much for you? And I'm like, no. I mean, it'll change everything. And granted, it'll be
Yeah.
more snacks I have to make or whatever. But the reality of it is the dynamic will change so
Yeah.
strongly that they may have meltdowns, they may get into a
Yeah.
fight, who knows? But realistically, they're all going to operate on a much higher level
Yeah.
for each other just because that dynamic has changed. And I love that you
Yeah.
brought it up because I remember that. I'm like, oh yeah, well that's because you got the easy kid.
Yeah.
You know, that's the no, I was completely wrong. I don't have an
Right.
easy kid. I just have children, and one stepping out is really
Yeah.
effective. So again, the name of your book is Raising Resilience: How to Help Our Children Thrive in Times of Uncertainty. I recommend everybody to read it, and I'm actually going to recommend it to our book club as well because
Oh,
it's been a
great.
great read. I have not finished it, admittedly, but
Nice.
I think probably like yourself, I have
Yeah.
9 books that I'm trying to
Yeah,
read right now.
exactly.
So
Stack.
it's just what it is. What it is.
Yeah.
And then everyone can reach you at howtoddlersthrive.com. Is that the best
Actually, the
place?
better website is tovahklein.com.
TovahKlein.com. Okay. All right. I will make sure to put a note, and we'll put that in the show notes as well.
Yeah,
So,
great.
all right. Well, we do appreciate you being here. Again, thank you very much. For everyone listening, thank you for being here as well. And we'll see you next week.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
I'm a dad, that's what I do.